All right, we are live. We're ready, Kelly.
Okay, we have our quorum. All right, let's take our roll call. Commissioner Case. Okay, Commissioner Moorhead
Present.
and Commissioner Tarbett.
I'm here.
And do we have any others that I'm not seeing here? Okay.
Member Lee, Member Case, Member Moorhead, and Member Tarbett.
Yep.
We do have a forum.
Okay. All right, let's go on to, do we have any public comments at this time?
I did not receive any, and there's no one in the attendees list or in attendance.
All right. Okay, let's move on to approve our agenda and our minutes from September 12th and our agenda for today for November 14th. Do I have a motion to approve these?
I make a motion to approve the agenda for November 14th and the minutes for September 12th.
All right, do I have a second?
I second.
And all approved, say aye.
I
Aye. Okay, looks like we have a fairly full agenda today. Let's get moving right on to our guest presentation by Robert Stowe, the TIF presentation. Mr. Stowe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you indicate, my name is Bob Stowe, Stowe Development and Strategies. I'm an economic and community development consultant for cities, counties, tribal governments, and some higher ed. And recently, by the city of College Place. Also working with me is Morgan Shook. He's not here this evening, but he's with me. And we're going to be conducting a tax increment financing evaluation for the city. And so what I'd like to do tonight is just give you a brief overview of tax increment financing in Washington State, and then spend just a little bit of time and apply it to a potential tax increment area that we're evaluating tonight. And Madam Chair, if it's okay, can I share my screen?
There you go.
Yes.
Yep. So just a very basic overview, sort of high level overview. Tax increment financing, this is a model for tax increment financing. It's a generic model that could apply to any sort of TIP program throughout the country. Washington State recently allowed tax increment financing as part of the last year's legislative session. And what tax increment financing does, it allows you to focus on an area, a strategic area, form a district or a boundary around that area, put in needed infrastructure for that development. And then as development occurs, new assessed valuation is created, and you're able then to capture that incremental value of those additional taxes based on the tax levy of the city, based on the tax levy of the county, the port, and other eligible taxing districts, so that you could use it then to pay for the infrastructure that caused the development in the first place. And the difference in our law versus other states is we've excluded several taxing districts that have caused issue for and prevented really Washington from forming a similar legislation in years past by excluding the state property tax and then excluding approved school levies, voter approved school levies. So in most cases, the levy that gets applied is probably $4 and under $4 or under $5 per thousand of assessed valuation. And the minimum I've seen is around $2. So somewhere in that range of $2 to $4.50 will likely be the levy amount that gets created for College Place, if College Place were to go forward with the tax increment financing, then based on whatever private development it occurs in a specific area, based on the infrastructure that gets put in, not necessarily inside the area, but directly related to that development. So a quick summary, tax increment financing is available to 3 jurisdictions or 3 types of public entities, cities, counties, and ports. Those are the only jurisdictions that can form one. It's really a powerful economic development tool set up to help a project that is waiting for infrastructure rather than a project, rather than TIF looking for a project. So really designed for a project ready to go where development, it's if not for the fact that the infrastructure were not there preventing it, would not take place. There is a sort of a but-for requirement in the legislation, like most tax increment financing projects, that will have to prove the case that development could not go forward or would not be viable but for the infrastructure investment that the city was making as part of the project. Of course, that would result in new increased value that wouldn't take place ordinarily. Then there's some public benefits that come along with that increased value, namely the infrastructure revenue that you get to utilize to pay for any debt. It also may include some other placemaking amenities or community amenities that may occur because development's taking place that would organically occur. That results in both short-term and long-term jobs. And then, of course, taxes from that development not only help pay for the infrastructure, but ongoing taxes can help pay for service levels too. These are what's sort of a laundry list of public infrastructure that tax increment financing can fund. And the important part of this list is that they all must be publicly owned. Doesn't have to be publicly owned by the city of College Place, but it has to be publicly owned based on the current legislation, either by the port, by the county, or by the city. And most likely, if a city is the sponsor, you're going to be owning the public infrastructure. You're going to be moving forward with a TIF rather than building infrastructure, than issuing the debt for ownership by the port or by the county. But it includes some, general infrastructure that you would imagine: the streets, the roads, sidewalks. It also includes some unique infrastructure such as parking decks, parking terminals, park and ride facilities for transit, park and community facilities and recreational areas. And it also includes some electric, broadband, and rail service mitigation of brownfields. You could also spend resources from TIF on energy efficiency projects, childcare facilities, and affordable housing projects. So there's some key elements for tax increment financing. A city, a county, or port who is pursuing tax increment financing would first adopt an ordinance, would determine what improvements are going to be financed with tax increment financing, and then whether bonds are going to be issued. But there are some limitations, and those limitations are that a city, county, or port can form no more than 2 active tax increment areas at any one time, and they cannot overlap. So the city could form 2, the county could form 2, and the port could form 2. So you could have a total of 6 tax increment areas in theory, so long as none of them overlap. The increment areas also combine, those 2 increment areas that by each jurisdiction cannot total more than 200 million of assessed valuation, or more than 20% of the total assessed valuation of the sponsoring jurisdiction when the tax increment area is formed. Cannot add additional public improvements or change the boundary once the increment area is adopted. That's once the council adopts an ordinance forming this tax increment area. We can't add any projects that haven't already been identified, and we can't increase or change the boundary. The boundary can only be retired at the time that the public improvements are fully paid for and no more revenue is needed from the tax increment area. Must also include a deadline as to when the public improvements will begin. And that's required 5 years after the adoption of the ordinance, unless you have cause for an extension. And the law doesn't define what cause would be, but I would imagine it could include some reasonable measures that you're taking all steps to pursue construction, but for whatever reason, simply needed more time to begin construction. The local government may only receive enough the revenues supported by TIF to support the infrastructure. So your tax increment area may be able to produce $50 million over a 25-year period, but if you've only identified $25 million worth of infrastructure investment or infrastructure needed, you can only collect $25 million from the tax increment area, the remaining balance just gets redistributed amongst all the taxing districts. And that increment area cannot exist for longer than 25 years, or the period in time in which debt is issued, if it's shorter period. So the taxpayer impacts, which are very little or minimal, if at all, the levy rate is going to be the same, both within the tax increment area as outside the tax increment area. The real power of Washington State's tax increment area is that utilizing several taxing districts levy, not just the cities, that traditionally would have maybe gone to the operating fund or your general fund, but you're also utilizing the ports, you're also utilizing the counties and any other participating jurisdiction, excluding state schools and excluding the state property tax. And the developer is paying the same amount as he would if no tax increment area had been formed. But again, he's paying a higher amount of evaluation because that's how our property tax system works, is that when property gets developed and you have a higher value, that levy is applied. So that's what's fueling, that's what's paying for the tax increment area for the infrastructure improvements. Not a tax increase to anyone else. It's simply the developer developing the property paying the amount that he would have paid anyway, and you're just simply redirecting that amount back to pay for the infrastructure. And this is a map that shows a potential tax increment area. You can see in the hatched area that represents the Stone Creek area, and then another hatched area that essentially runs north and south along College Avenue. And so infrastructure improvements likely that could be funded for this area would be the Madroina Road. Maybe there's some other vital infrastructure roads that could be paid for, as well as maybe some parking facilities along College Avenue. And so that's the development footprint or area that we're going to be evaluating, at least one of them, before we come back to the commission with recommendation in regards to which tax increment area should be further studied and further evaluated. One of the requirements for the state law is that a project analysis be completed in the state treasurer. And then the state treasurer has 90 days in which to review that project analysis. They'll review, the projected revenues, the financial plan that we lay out, risk assessment plan. If no development occurs, how will the city pay for the debt service? It will forecast the number of jobs that get produced from not only construction jobs, but ongoing jobs as a result of the development, and a laundry list of other items that the state has required that we evaluate as part of the project analysis. The state will review that for 90 days, submit comments that the city council must consider before adopting any ordinance. So the biggest part of sort of all the evaluation is generally going to be the state's review period of 90 days. But we should be able to come up with at least a projected development program, likely sort of some sensitivity analysis. Maybe it would be a conservative analysis, a moderate analysis, and then an aggressive development program in order to forecast revenues for this particular area. And then once the city is able to determine which TIA it wants to move forward with, we'll start on the project analysis. That'll take a couple months, and we should have that ready, an ordinance ready then to go once the state does its review for the city council in May, so that they can adopt an ordinance by June, which is the other requirement the state has. That you can only form a tax increment area prior to June 1st in any 1 year. So if you miss that June 1st deadline, you're waiting for the one more year in which to form a tax increment area. So I'll stop there. I know that was a lot of information, but I wanted to just give you an overview of tax increment area, tax increment financing, and then I'd be glad to address any questions that the commission might have at this time.
So Mike, what do you intend to use with these resources, these taxes for?
Yeah, yeah. So really, it's things that we've discussed for years that have appeared in capital facility plan, and namely for the following areas. Now, we can have up to 2 TIF districts. We'll see when Mr. Stowe has the draft study done what it shows as far as the amount of money it can be leveraged. But at least the initial premise is that we would like create one district, hold one, for future projects, but the one that we would create would span the Stone Creek area to College Avenue. And ideally, what it would pay for is to front end load some improvements on Majanier Road, because while we've been successful chasing down some grants for that due to inflation, the construction cost on that has dramatically outpaced our ability to just do that with grants. Keep in mind, originally, if you look at back capital plans y'all approved, the initial cost on that was $4 million, and now it's shot up to 9 million. So that's just a flavor on that one project. Likewise, I believe we'll have some exposure on that east-west road that crosses Mike and Craig's property and goes to the school district. It's key that we get that in to facilitate good flow of traffic between the eventual new school, the high school, and then the new developments that go in down there, as well as the intersection that connects that new road to College Avenue. And then the last thing is along College Avenue, issue I've heard repeatedly through my time here has been that one of the issues for developing along our downtown corridor has been our parking requirement. And throughout the corridor, there are several parcels of land that are in the middle of the blocks that are just sitting empty right now. And ideally, that would be good to build shared public parking facilities, because if we built some scattered public parking lots through that downtown corridor, then we could waive the parking requirement, and then I believe more development would follow. And a good test case for that is that Vesper apartment complex that is going in at 8th and College Avenue. That was actually at risk because they couldn't accommodate all the parking on their property. And what we've done in this instance is we've worked through a provisional parking sharing agreement at the city hall parking lot, but we don't have a big enough parking lot here to do that for every single property up and down College Avenue. So really, we need to build these like satellite parking lots so we can defray that requirement from the developer, and hopefully over time we'll develop a nice mixed use downtown feel, which was the original vision for College Avenue. And the parking issue has stymied a lot of that.
So Mr. Stowe, does this TIF, does it raise additional taxes, or what's the benefit? I'm failing to see the benefit of it if it doesn't.
Well, the real power is that you're utilizing the property taxes that normally would have gone to the county, normally would have gone to the port and all the other participating jurisdictions. Now they're coming back to the city for the city to use to pay for the infrastructure investment, in addition to just that property tax that's collected by the city in that area as well, that incremental tax. So each jurisdiction will continue to get the same level they got the previous year. That'll be the base. And then when development happens, all the new developments that lift and that property tax lift and evaluation goes to the city. So it's not a new tax, but it's just redirecting taxes that formerly had gone to other jurisdictions, as well as the city, to pay for the infrastructure that's causing the development in the first place.
And so you're going to use the county assessor's numbers. So like that one area, Stone Creek, you're going to use the county assessor's numbers that eventually get created by development down there. Is that what you're going to do?
That's correct. So we'll forecast. One will determine, what the current assessed value is, and for the most part, that's a pretty low assessed value because it's vacant property today. So clearly, just the area in the south will meet the 200 million threshold. We have to further evaluate all the Main Street properties to make sure that all of them combined, along with the Stone Creek area, are below 200 million. So that's the first test. But then we'll also project based on development, the program that the developer anticipates, the timing, the absorption rate of the number of units that the market might be able to absorb, how the county might value that, because it's not necessarily the same as the construction value. It's going to be, a little bit different. So we'll forecast that. And then the county will ultimately have to assess that like they would all properties every year. And then when they make those assessments, the levies that all the various taxing districts that are inside that TIA get applied to that AV, and that money gets sent directly to the city to pay for your debt service for any infrastructure that you need to include in the project.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions for Mr. Stowe?
I just have one quick question. I thought, Mr. Stowe, when you were answering Doug's question, that you said that TIF was, future tax revenue, but isn't the TIF actually just some, bond or security that is backed by the future tax revenue?
Well, yeah, I mean, I view as tax increment financing is really, it's a financing tool. And so the city will issue, you can either pay as you go, collect the TIF revenue and then apply that to whatever the infrastructure cost might be. Generally, most jurisdictions will issue debt because you need far more infrastructure investment in order to produce the kind of development that you're interested in.
Yeah.
So you'd issue bonds. It'd be limited term general obligation bonds. So the full faith of this credit will be offered. And if development does not occur, and you default on those payments, at risk is the city's general resources. So you'll get the highest interest rate because you're backing those with your general property tax revenues. But you're right, you're simply issuing debt. The tax increment financing piece doesn't interfere with the type of debt that you issue, or even if you're going to issue debt at all. It's just a mechanism for you to collect the taxes that are generated in that tax increment area from the city's levy, as well as from the other participating taxing districts levy, and then apply that and hopefully use all of that revenue to support the debt service. But if development doesn't happen, or if it's lower or it's slower than what you anticipate, all of that will create some need for you to fill the gap associated with what the TIF revenues produce and what your debt service would be from your bonds. And so you just simply the city will have any number of its own resources utilized in order to pay for that debt service. It's not restricted only to the revenue source inside the tax increment area, although that's where you'd want it to come from. In a perfect world, you would need no more revenue beyond just the revenue that comes out of the tax increment area. But we know from setting these up also from other jurisdictions, until development gets stabilized, especially in the first several years, you're most likely going to need to have some interim financing because the development won't be fully operational yet. You're not collecting the highest amount of tax. So therefore, you still have debt service generally at equal payments, or unless you structure it with interest only, you still have the same amount of debt service. And so you're going to have to fill that gap, like with some other city resources. And we'll sort of lay all that out for the city as we look at several different options.
So Mike, is it your intention to issue bonds or whatever kind of debt before you start seeing revenue?
Essentially, yes. So that way we can build this common use infrastructure to spearhead this various development. And that's why it's going to be key, the study of Mr. Stowe's work on, because we want conservative projections to essentially protect the city and everyone. We don't want to get crazy with it. But in essence, we need these resources so we can build this infrastructure that's gonna essentially trigger this newer development. Because Like they had a development out on Craig's property, that lakeside development, they purchased it. And they're gonna be building a litany of roads out there. However, roads connecting that to here and that to the eventual new school out there, that some of that's gonna have to be overbuilt over what they would trigger. And this is a way to essentially buffer that and make sure it gets done ahead of time. So that way we get the commercial in here, we get the residential in here, and then for College Avenue, we finally position it where we get more mixed use downtown, because over the years, a number of developments have hit a brick wall because of that parking issue.
All right, do we have any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Stowe. That was very interesting and enlightening for that presentation. And let's move on to our action agenda. And our first, we have quite a few things here that we need to go over, is our development code update by Mr. Rizzatello, please.
Thank you. This was introduced past ed tech meeting. So as you all know, every year we receive applications, or staff submits an application to essentially update the development code to reflect more current practices, or to more easily accommodate development, and to try to cut red tape where we're able to. So with this ordinance proposal, what you're seeing, it really, compared to the past years, it's fairly cosmetic edits. It's not substantial ones as year past. So we used to have essentially maximum lot coverage rule, which essentially put some restrictions on the amount of surface that you could essentially build a structure on a parcel. We're essentially removing that language to it. Also, there was language pertaining to the donation of park space that you had to donate essentially roughly 1,000 square feet per dwelling unit. However, when you look at the market rate in this region of state, it ends up being around 400. And our other issue is the way the code was structured. It really had to be within the development itself, which sometimes works out good, but other times you end up with pieces of property. It may not be in the best future interest of the city to have as a park. So this allows where instead they could give a monetary donation, which would make sense because that could contribute to a piece of property that would be in the better interest of everyone. And then the last thing is having a master plan development code. And what that allows is a more organized process for community input, running it through the hearings examiner. And really, when you're dealing with a developer who is taking on several large pieces of property, they can essentially do a master planning process with the community, rearrange some of the uses since they have control of several of the parcels of property, and then run it through the public process, run it through the hearing examiner. And it's a more organized way to get larger development teed up and ready to go. Several communities, including Castle Rock, Clay Ellen, they utilize this. It's a fairly standard operating procedure. So those conclude the edits to this. This proposal in front of you was voted in the affirmative from Planning Commission. However, since there is a business nexus to it, it is a good thing, I believe, for Economic Development Commission and also sign off on this sort of stuff.
Okay, any questions or comments for Mr. Rizzatello on the adoption of this development code update? Okay, do we have a motion to recommend to City Council the adoption of the 2022 development code updates?
Yes, I move that we recommend. Bruce?
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Member Case. You're muted.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to our capital facility plan presentation by Mr. Zatello.
Hey, thank you. As y'all know, every year we do a 6-year capital facility plan, and that shows our expected pattern of investment in facilities and infrastructure within our respective utilities, streets, water, wastewater, storm, so on and so forth. The first year is more concrete since we're in the budget process for 2023. The 5 years after are more flexible. It's just showing essentially what the game plan is and then where we may be trying to chase around grant money from. So that is really what this demonstrates. I'll go over the general plans for next year and then the subsequent years you could take a look at, but there's a summary spreadsheet that's key that goes over everything. In administration, we have the council chambers project. So at the start of the year, the equipment finally is getting delivered. Where we'll actually have a dais like most other cities, and we'll be able to more easily have hybrid meetings. So that'll come to fruition. Finally, first part of the next year. Also fixing some sidewalks around municipal campus because a couple of them in the entryways are not ADA compliant and we need to fix that. Also some basically maintenance as far as the replacement of some of the arborvitae between the fire driveway and city hall because several of those have died. So there's that. In administration. In fire department, we have replacing the stairwell out back because that's going to be rusted and has some structural issues. And then year 2 of our payment for the regional fire training tower. As we get into the police, we are actually going to be doing a facility study next year to determine what the optimal size of a police department building is, because keep in mind the existing facility has several safety issues. It wasn't designed for a police station. It actually originally was residential apartments and then an automotive facility that got repurposed. So seeing what the need is, and then if it's substantiated enough, potentially in future years going out to voters to get a replacement facility. But that study process will really identify what the needs are, if it's needed, what the costs are, and then what the critical pathway forward is on that. Now going into parks, naturally the all hands on deck project next year's Lions Park. So that has had ever increasing price tag. We continue to write grants for, but that needs to come in a critical closure next year. So that will be happening. And then also some minor upgrades to Autumn Meadows Park. We're working on the final process of taking that park from the HOA because they voted to essentially give up their infrastructure, and then in return they're going to remunerate money to the city, so getting up to city standard. In the stormwater utility, we have some grants where we're essentially doing engineering at the camp facility to filter out the leaves from the water. We need to have that for our permit. Also fixing Birch from 4th to 6th. There's a lot of engineering next year, more so than construction. Construction will be the following year and a lot of stuff. Outfall replacement and some improvements to the public works yard. Now getting into the streets program, chip seal is mainly the west end of town between College and Bathe and also Cedar Bend. In our block resurfacing program, redoing Southeast Six from College to Date, and there's also going to be a water line replacement project in the same corridor because we have some corroded lines in there. Safe Walk College Place, we're using CDBG, Community Development Grant money to build sidewalk on Southwest Sixth and Eighth, so that'll be going in. And then Majanier Road, we're in the process of engineering that, so we truly know what the cost is, and then to go with construction on that. Construction will be in future years. Now going in wastewater utility, there's really two core projects going on there. One's wastewater treatment plant, and there's going to be an approval item on that later. So basically we have to upgrade it, and then there's a way of potentially limit our future exposure that we're going to get into later on this meeting. Also replacing lift station 5, that's a safety issue for our staff. It's in a and the public. It's in a coffee can structure in the middle of the sidewalk, and it has no backup generator. So if that fails, essentially it would back up sewage in the whole north part of the town. It's from the 60s. So we're buying some property, building a realistic lift station and abandoning the old one. Water, basically there we're continuing our high priority water main replacement project. And all that was in the water plan. And then there's engineering on a new well 7 out on Teal Road, because all the well projects, that's only catching us up to where we were 6 years ago before the other 2 wells failed. And then also a water tank to help back up the west end of town, because there is no water storage out there. So really the totality of next year amounts to a little over $39 million. The 6-year plan is about $127 million. If you look at how it's financed, really over 60% of this is dependent on a combination of outside grant dollars and the development community carrying it. So I'm going to this body for preliminary approval. Park Board has already voted on their part of it, and then this will go to council later in the month. So I'm basically looking for an advisory vote on this.
All right, do we have any questions or comments on the capital facility plan? Okay, could I have a motion to recommend to City Council the fiscal year 2023 to 2028, the capital facility plan, please?
I move that we accept it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kyle. And all in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Did we get all that?
Did you vote, Leslie?
Okay, I just got a bunch of gibberish on my end, so I didn't hear everything that was happening.
Kelly, we didn't hear your vote.
Oh, aye. Okay, let's move on to our Lions Park update. Mr. Rizzatello, please.
Hey, thank you. So I'm trying to draw the line on the sand with this project, because this project in particular, it's suffering from a combination of inflation plus dramatic scope creep, because everyone wants stuff in it, and there's not enough money to make every wish happen. So trying to draw a line in the sand to establish what the general components are of what we're doing out at the park. So you'll see the attached plans where it stands at right now. We have the 60% plans in. We're getting near 100%, mainly because by the beginning of the year, we want to be in a place where we can get this thing out to bid and go out to construction all next spring and summer and finally get it done. Keep in mind when this was originally included in the capital facility plan 5 years ago, the estimated cost was about 2 million and now it's over 5.2 million. And again, it's a combination of inflation plus various facets of the various advisory bodies and council want and additional things in it. So where the plans stand at right now is there's a splash pad, picnic shelter, restrooms. There is a walking path around the perimeter of the park, including some exercise equipment. The pond is going to be dredged. The concrete bank is going to be removed with a natural shore bank. So that way they'll remove that safety hazard. The baseball field is going to be replaced with a multi-purpose field. In the older buildings where we've had quite a bit of issues of folks hiding out back there and graffiti in the park, that will all be removed. Some of those outfield buildings will put a hill back there so folks can set up chairs and other things to watch sports that occur at that multi-use field. We're replacing irrigation. And then also putting in electrical and a little stage area to support the farmers market. And there'll be electrical and irrigation throughout many elements of that park. Also, the parking lots for the most part are going to be redone because that park actually takes in all the storm water from 12th and Myra all the way to 12th and Large. So we're actually having to put in about close to 45 storm filters to take in all the water. And then we're just going to fix the traffic circulation in the north lot to essentially allow for safe parking, but also safe usage of folks using the RV dump facility. And then we're adding some additional cameras so we can stymie folks that are currently graffitiing the park and doing other activities over there. And as part of another grant, there will be a sidewalk running down 8th Street with rapid flashing beacon at Larch and 8th. But really looking for an advisory vote, so that way we're drawing the line in the sand about what all is included. If the estimates on construction stay where we believe they'll be, this will all happen. If inflation continues to do bizarre things, then we may need to look at subtracting more, where we just go into the core bread and butter of what is in the grant application. So that's what's before you today.
Okay, are there any questions or comments on the Lions Park engineering plans? Okay, well, it sounds really good to me. Do I have a motion to recommend to City Council to approve this, the 60% engineering plans for Lions Park, please?
I'll make the motion to approve.
And do I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, let's move on to our multifamily tax exemption by Mr. Rizzatello, please.
Thank you. So multifamily tax exemption, we've talked about this a number of years because for many years we outright could not offer this. However, there was basically a temporary opening approved by the legislature a couple of years ago to the definition of what is a city, and now we can offer it. And what this allows is essentially if a multifamily developer offers a certain percentage of the units as affordable, you can essentially offer some forgiveness on property taxes either for 8, 12, or 20 years, depending on what the development looks like. The key thing is, as it stands right now, when you're doing the sewer development, it needs to be in an area where there's transit. It's designated as essentially an urban center. So either a downtown area or area where commerce takes place. And we have to get this code in essentially right now because there's a narrow window in which the cities that don't typically qualify for this can peddle this. But keep in mind, just creating this code doesn't mean that it's going to be like the dollar giveaway and everyone's just going to automatically give it. There will be a process where this commission is essentially going to be reviewing and providing recommendations on the which ones get it, which ones don't, and then it'll also go through city council for approval as well, and then they have to keep on, and then we can put other requirements on it as well, make sure it's good development. The areas where we're really aiming this for is essentially areas downtown. So College Avenue area, some of the frontage area along Stone Creek, potential stuff along Myra and Whitman. Basically areas where may need a little assistance to get it going at. Most jurisdictions and Tri-Cities and their neighbor Wawa already have this. Most of this code was taken as a boilerplate from the State Department of Commerce, which has a draft code. So we stole a lot of that because it was already done. And that's what's in front of you all today.
All right, any questions or comments on this? Okay, well, I need a motion to recommend to City Council the adoption of Chapter 3.52 multifamily housing tax exemption to the College Place Municipal Code, please.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. Let's move on to our Walla Walla wastewater treatment consolidation feasibility study by Mr. Rizzatello, please.
Hey, thank you. So this ties into what I alluded to earlier when we went over capital facility plan. So per state permit regulations, we have to do dramatic improvements to our wastewater treatment plant facility. If we were to go out of the loan, what that would yield is that we have to replace filters, the whole screening process, and then basically dig a Bennington-sized lake of clean effluent, and that will make us through phase one. It would be about $26 million. The issue is if we just stay the course on our own plan, in the requirement, and the problem is the state has not given us a timeline on this, and they refuse to, but they allude that at some point in the magical future that they could put phase 2 or phase 3 on us. And what phase 2 or phase 3 is that there's this PCB level in water that they can't really test to, but that they're trying to hold everyone at. And if that ends up being forced on us, that's essentially tens of millions of additional dollars, and that would need more land to land apply the effluent to. And we're boxed in at that plant, so that would lead to a messy aggregation of essentially condemnations and everything else. So if we stay that alone, we really only have like a 5-year guarantee that nothing will happen. When you're talking about tens of millions of dollars, is not that much. What we've been doing and talking with State Department of Ecology and City of Walla Walla is City of Walla Walla is also under the gun with some requirements as well. Theirs is a little bit different because they have water rights on their effluent. They treat theirs to a cleaner standard than we do. So they actually pump it to downstream irrigators that use it. and they're just starting their wastewater facility plan. So we've had some generalized discussions about what if we did the filter improvements and general treatment improvements, but instead of building the Bennington-sized lake of sewage, what if we try to spend some additional time hammering out an agreement with Walla Walla, where maybe we send our treated effluent up to their plant and then they further clean it and send it out to the irrigators. So basically building a pipe from our plant up to their plant. The nice part is that removes phase 2 and 3 is an immediate threat to us. Now, in the future, if Walla Walla is being ordered to do additional improvements, naturally that would impact us. However, you're spreading that over more people. So I believe it would be less of a burden. The general premise here is, and we've had some meetings between both councils, is really encouraging the creation of a sewer district to govern this, because that way it's people representing everyone, and that one side takes all, or one side's the senior one, the other side gets the remnants of what's left over. So this regionalization study was paid for by a grant from the state. The Cliff's notes of it is that this can work, and essentially building doing the filter improvements and building the pipe up to their plant is the same cost as actually doing the improvements at our plant and then building the Bennington-sized lake of sewage. So I'm trying to get this report in front of everyone just to essentially give a preliminary nod that we're accepting the findings of this, and essentially just allowing a nod that we're going to be talking with City of Walla Walla and see what we can do. But really, it's to provide for equitable and affordable future for everyone here. Because if we go with this alone, phase 2 or 3, we do not have the, as I think Brian here can attest to, we do not have the financial wherewithal to come up with a phase 2 or 3. Plus, I think people would come out with pitchforks if we started condemning half of the west side of town all the way out to Last Chance. So that's what this study is here in front of. We're just an advisory vote to accept it and to allow staff to negotiate with City of Walla Walla as this moves forward.
Okay, any questions or comments on this? Okay, can I have a motion to accept this report and recommend to City Council to direct the staff to work on negotiations with the City of Walla Walla, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Let's move on to our staff reports. First with our draft hotel feasibility market study by Mr. Rizzatello, please.
Hey, thank you. We commissioned this study because, as we all know, a major need in this community is lodging facilities. We have a couple of vacation rentals, but by and large, all the main brands are in the City of Walla Walla. So this firm acts as one that does market analysis, and then they try to pair investors and interested client franchise hotels that come to the city, and they do site tours. They were here about a month ago, and the Cliff's notes of the study, and you can take a gander at it at your own leisure. But basically, the community can support up to 2 hotels of 60 to 70 rooms apiece. Just in the city of College Place. One is representative of the city at large, and then the other is representative of the need from the university. And areas that they're recommending they be placed at is either around the Meadowbrook area, so across from the high school, Stone Creek property, or over by Hop Thief. And then the other is somewhere near the campus of Walla Walla University, one of the properties that the university owns, or one of the random properties on College Avenue. Since that time, that firm that has done this study, they have found some investors, and they are gonna start having talks with some property owners. But there definitely is substantial interest in this. So I want to make sure you were aware of this and aware of what's going on.
Well, that sounds interesting. Do we have any questions or comments on that? Okay, let's move on to our event update with Light Up the Avenue from Ms. Sinclair, please.
Yes, our annual Light Up the Avenue event will be on December 1st this year. We'll have a tree lighting ceremony at 5:30, lighted parade at 6 o'clock, and laser light show at the old Rogers School location at 7 o'clock. And we are currently accepting participation forms for parade entries, which can be found on the City of College Place website.
And thank you to Columbia REA for helping us pay for said laser lights.
That sounds cool. So not the fireworks, but the laser show this time.
Exactly. So in the past year or two, we've received some complaints about the fireworks for PTSD and so forth. So what the decision's been made is that for Christmas, since a lot of times with the fog, you can't really see the fireworks anyway, we would try this out, and if it's good, continue it for the Christmas event. But for 4th of July, we'll always do fireworks.
Okay. No, I like that laser idea. That'll be something different. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Sinclair, do we have a fair amount of entries already for our parade, or are we needing to get more?
We currently have about 10 entries.
Oh.
So we can definitely take some more.
We definitely, okay. All right. Okay, let's move on then to our development tracker by Mr. Rizzatello, please.
Hey, thank you. So this provides a summary of where we're at with both commercial, industrial, and residential development. So they have Project Quickie Marts. That's like a gas station convenience store. They are still looking. The one thing that we're trying to work through is they're actually in talks with the city about potentially paying to move one of our detention basins and putting it where a detention basin is at near 125. So more to follow on that one. Chipotle, they continue to remodel a former Chase Bank building that is being split into two essentially. So one side of it will be a Chipotle with a Chipotlane, and that'll be open by the early summer. And then the other half of it, they're looking for another tenant to go with them. That's why there's a sign in front of it. Burger King, they continue to work through plans on the other side of 125 over by Aspen Dental. There continues to be hotel interests, as I just alluded to. Hot Mama's, the coffee shop on South College at 9th and College, that's now open. It's open later and seems to be doing good. Project FM, they're still interested. We're still in discussions with them. Really, they're following, I would say, the residential development that will be occurring as part of that lakeside development. So that's what's holding that up. Project C is a very interesting one that popped up. So basically, from what I understand, Pasco messed up on a deal and the key wholesaler may have other interests, so we're seeing what we can do to persuade them to head this way, so there's a narrow window of opportunity on that. Project Flight, that's out by Martin Airfield, they're still master planning it. We're trying to figure out exactly what they're doing out there. Project Medical, that is that Best Med facility over on Commercial Drive, and that building is pretty close to being done, so, that's been going good. Project Detroit, there's actually a car dealership that operates out in Pasco, and they're looking at operating another satellite facility here, and they're looking at one or two of the lots behind Meadowbrook Plaza. Project Arches, that's already a fast food establishment, but they want a branch out this way, so we're working on that. And then Project Equipment, unfortunately, this one appears dead, although they bought the property. This equipment company got bought out by another equipment company. And then I think they're just staying put where they're at, and they might be downsizing a little bit. So even though they own the property, that essentially hit a brick wall. Residential development, Homestead, the Y-size structures and domes, that got delayed to essentially next year, because they're just very cautious about the current housing market. Villages at Fort Walla Walla, the multifamily development behind Home Depot, they're looking for additional investors, and that seems to be a little bit rocky at the moment, but we're hopeful. They own the property. Sermon Development, Spitzenberg, they're permitted, they can go. Stone Creek Development, the Lakeside Group, they are already starting a plan for what's going Craig's piece of property. They outright own Craig's piece of property, so we believe that they may be planning to have a full build out of that potentially around 7 years or so, so that could spring up quick. So we're in constant communication with them. Villages of Garrison Creek, that got approved by the hearing examiner. We're in talks with, having the developer talk to City of Walla Walla about some Myra Road mitigation. But ultimately that looks like that'll be teed up. They have about 70 units to fill that donut hole at Villages of Garrison Creek. Vesper project at 8th and College. Council approved the downtown catalyst incentive, so they're getting all their permits ready to go. I believe they'll be breaking ground this winter on that, so that is going good. And then Deer Meadows subdivision, that's out on Southwest 12th. We believe that's gonna break ground soon. The hearing examiner approved that, so that's like if you drew a line where Davis would continue going south all the way down to 12. So that's being subdivided out to have about 12 parcels. So that's going. And then Whispering Creek on Southeast 8th, the Dan Priest development, they've basically built the last house that could accommodate them there, and that's on the market. And then that subdivision's completely done. So that's the status of where everything is at. Any questions?
Okay, if we don't have any questions or comments, let's move on to our closing, and our next meeting is December 5, which is a, oh, that's not a Monday, is it?
No,
Okay. Is it a Monday?
Yeah, it's a Monday.
Okay, okay.
Yep. First
All right.
Monday.
So next Monday, December 5 at 5 p.m. And we'll see you all then. Thank you, Mike and Sherry, for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's concluded at 6:04. Yeah. I think it was